Youth sports referees of Reddit, what is the craziest parent you've had to deal with on the field? I've posted this before, but it's worth telling again. When I was 16, I was umpiring the championship game of the baseball league for 9 to 10-year-olds in my city with a friend of mine. The team in the field is up by 1 in the last inning and there are 2 outs with the bases loaded. Parents are screaming in excitement. The batter smacks a line drive that falls in front of the right fielder. The runner on third scored easily, and the runner that was on second is trying to score as well. The throw from the right fielder is way off, but there's one problem. The second kid never touched home plate. He stepped right over it. So while the team that thinks they just won is celebrating, the catcher picks the ball up and tags the runner who missed home plate. I called him out. The parents went crazy, cursing at me at the top of their lungs in front of their kids and even going as low as throwing stuff at me. It was pretty terrible. Turns out one of the parents was recording the game, and between innings he showed me what he had recorded. I was right. The kid was never even close to touching the plate. The team that thought they had won ended up losing in 8 innings. He showed the video to the rest of the parents and a few of the people slipped me some extra money after the game for treating me so poorly. However, one parent did confront me in the parking lot and tried to fight me until he was dragged away by his wife. TL. Doctor. 9 to 10-year-old baseball is serious business. I was reffing a 10 and under soccer game, again 10 years old or younger. There was this one larger kid who was being physically aggressive and knocking other kids down to get the ball. I gave a free kick to the other team after this happened and took a knee to explain to the kid that you cannot use your hands to fight for the ball. Well, this kid's dad just loses it, shouting out that I'm a wuss, his kid is doing nothing wrong, open my eyes, blah blah blah. Well, it came to a point where I told the parent that if he did not stop, I would ask him to leave, and if he did not leave, the game was over and everyone goes home. Thankfully he shut up, but I will never forget how insane some parents get over their kids' games. Obligatory, not me, but my aunt was the crazy parent. When my cousin played baseball, she'd always scream the entire game and was easily the loudest parent there. One game, the coach benched my cousin because he was having a very off day, just was playing terribly. My aunt starts screaming at the coach to put him back in. He refuses, so she charged him and starting punching him. Other parents jumped in to stop her and she ended up fighting them as well. The police were called and she ended up spending a month in jail, paying several $1,000s, doing community service, and was banned from attending any sporting events. Fun times. I was about 8 years old watching my brother's hockey game, who was 13 at the time. He was playing in a tournament in a crappy Eastern Ontario town. It was a pretty heated match where both teams' parents were yelling at each other throughout the game. Once the game finished, both group of parents funneled into the lobby where the shouting persisted. One of the players on our squad had lesbian parents. They looked exactly like how you would expect a Canadian lesbian hockey mom would look. One of the moms started shouting and pointing at her father from the opposing team. The father then proceeded to give the lesbian mom a right hook, knocking her to the ground. Chaos erupts and my dad quickly took the man into an enclosed room before he got killed. My father then explained to him that he hit a woman. The dad from the opposing was in shock as he thought he had hit a man. He ended up getting arrested shortly after. The good old days. I used to be a youth hockey referee. I had a game once with a team that was known to be very dirty and have parents that were out of control. It was squirt level, which meant there was no body checking allowed, and this team was going all over the place and hitting everyone in sight. After calling 3 very obvious penalties, the parents started going nuts at us referees, swearing, leaning over the glass to scream at us, etc. When finally one parent threw something on the ice. I was relatively new and was getting nervous about what to do, but my fellow ref calmly skated over to their fan section, pointed from one spot to another in the stands, and said everyone sitting from here to here, and then proceeded to kick about 1/4 of the fans out of the arena. It was pretty great to behold. I referee hockey, and I was refereeing a game in a tournament when this happened. To make this easier, I will call the 2 teams, white team and black team. To anyone familiar with hockey, as a referee, I must call penalties when players break the rules. Well, early on in this game, I was calling a penalty on black team, and after I had assessed the penalty to the player, white team's coach started to yell at me that the other team's player should be ejected from the game because he was trying to injure white team's players. I calmly told the coach that it did not look intentional to me and that the kids are only 6 to 7 years old and not playing at the competitive level, so they might not have fully developed skills. White team's coach was furious and started to yell swear words at me, and I assessed him a penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct. This is correct procedure to follow as an official. After that, the white team's coach was calm for most of the remainder of the game up until 3 minutes left. One of the white team's players tripped and slid into the boards hard and hurt himself, and the coach thought I should throw out another one of the black team's players. Once again, I skated over to him and informed him that there was no penalty and that the white team's player just tripped. This would turn out to be the last straw for this particular coach. He opened up the door and stepped out onto the ice so that we were face to face, and he started to yell at me that I wasn't doing my job properly and that his players, white team, were getting seriously hurt. I instructed him to get back on the bench and he refused. He then grabbed me by the collar and I forcibly removed his hand and promptly ejected him from the game. Then he refused to leave, and I told him that the game would not continue until he left. The other parents, coaches, then forced him to leave. Everything worked out right. Well, that is where you're wrong. Things got even more out of hand at this point. After another stoppage of play, I noticed that white team's coach still had not left the arena, and that he was in fact on black team's bench yelling at their coach. As soon as I noticed this, I made haste towards black team's bench and told white team's coach that he has to leave the arena. This sentence would turn out to be the proverbial shit hitting the fan. The coach started swearing in front of 6 to 7 year olds and telling me to get a real job and to cut my hair. I'm a male with shoulder length hair because I looked like a B*TCH working a low wage job. Despite this man's abhorrent comments, I kept composure and asked him to leave, or I would have the tournament security bring police to escort him out. As soon as those words left my mouth, he wanted to fight. He was taunting me into fighting him by saying things along the lines of, "You think you're so tough, why don't we settle this with our fists right now?" Needless to say, I did not engage in a good old fisticuff. Instead, I waited because security was on their way. They arrived and forcibly removed this parent from the arena, and the security guards were met with a loud standing ovation from both team spectators in the stands. In the end, the coach was suspended from the tournament and the league governing body revoked his coaching license because this was not his first incident with abuse of an official. It wasn't just one parent, it was all of them watching a particular game. I didn't referee any differently this game, but none of them could handle the fact that, because I also played soccer, I'd let a little physical contact go. They wanted me to call a penalty every single time one player touched another. It's soccer, people. Contact happens. I finally had to stop the game, call over both coaches, and tell them to calm down their parents or I would send them all to their cars, something I was well within my rights to do. They calmed down, or at least grumbled low enough that I couldn't hear, and the kids finished the game. One of the parents took the issue to the league officials. I explained what happened, and they told me I was correct. I played volleyball my whole life, and when you are in tournaments, players from other teams in the pool that aren't playing are assigned to be line judges, keep score, etc. When I was line judging, when I was 16, I called a ball in, and a parent in the crowd obviously disagreed with the call. How do I know? Because she spent the next 8 minutes yelling at me, calling me a cheater, saying I'm jealous of her boys, we beat them earlier, so not sure where that came from, screaming that the tournament was rigged. I felt horrible for her kid who was obviously extremely embarrassed throughout the whole process. After the 8 minutes was up, and a warning from the ref, the lady was thrown out of the gym. She was later let back in, but Jesus Christ, she was off the charts. I occasionally ref fencing tournaments and I have 2 fun memories. The first thing you need to know is that a lot of fencers will yell after every touch, if there is even the slightest hint they could have gotten a point. There was a kid about 10 years old who was kinda obnoxious about it. Every touch he would scream. He went up by a solid margin before the other person figured out his game. The opponent just trailed off like 8 points in a row to make it super close. It got to match point and they both moved forward and did this stupid swashbuckling thing that was disgusting from a form perspective, but the screaming kid ripped off his mask and yelled before looking at the lights to see he never actually hit his opponent. I called the point and his coach went fucking ballistic. Threatened to have me disbarred, whatever the fuck that means. I told him what happened and that, unless he wanted himself and his fencer removed from the venue, he needed to calm down. I honestly expected him to hit me in the back with a chair when I turned to shake hands with the kids. There was a mixed age group tournament that had a kid who was like 15. Every touch he would wind up and beat the hell out of people. I issued a few warnings in his first match. Then one of my friends was his next opponent who took offense to him beating up on kids. My friend was a much better fencer. Every attack was parried and followed by an audible thwack. After like 4 of those, my friend told him that him hurting the kids ended there or he would make sure he couldn't fence the rest of the day. He complained that he was threatened, which I promptly ignored. I later found out his coach was telling him to fence like that to demoralize his opponents. I've never wanted to punch a coach more. I was a volunteer ref for one night only at the elementary school near my high school for floor hockey night. I live in Canada, so we had some pretty hockey passionate kids and parents playing. Yes, parents were allowed to play, and high schoolers had to reference. Only one school staff was present. It was a disaster from the start. It was fine for the most part of the game when one little kid kicked in the puck. This one middle-aged dad was livid and yelled at me to disallow the goal. I told him it was a for fun game and I wasn't even keeping score, and this resulted in like 5 parents screaming and 3 actually grabbed their kids and left. I used to referee amateur rugby league when I was about 15 for 2 years. Mostly it was easy and fun, and keeping the players in line when they were say U12 level was actually pretty simple. However, one time I was asked to referee for a U18 sevens tournament and shit got real, though not with a parent. I blew the whistle for offside. In rugby league this means the defending team are not getting back 10 meters after a tackle has been made. Mostly it's laziness, but it's also cheating, so you take them 10 meters further back and bring the tackle count back to 1 if they are taking the piss. One of the players, much bigger than me, took exception and started mouthing off and swearing that I was a little shit and didn't know what I was doing. That earned him a penalty and 10 meters more with a warning that if he spoke another word to me in dissent he'd take his team back even further to their try line and have to defend all 6 tackles. This time he squared up to me, and because he was 2 years older and much bigger I started to brick my pants a little. Fortunately, his parents saved me from a surefire headbutt by dragging him off the field. His team conceded a try in the next set and it lost them the game. In my match report I noted the excellent behavior of the grown-up dad and the players' behavior towards me. Put me off reffing the older kids. On one of my youth hockey teams, my coach was also a doctor. In one game, a player on the other team ended up getting hit pretty badly and likely was concussed, so my coach went to look at him while the assistant coach took over. During the assistant coach's time in charge, we let up 2 goals to lose a 2-1 lead and ended up losing 2-3. Now there was one parent who was known to have anger issues, and he was furious at the assistant coach for blowing the game, screaming at him from the stands and loudly cussing at him. One of the other parents, a local police officer, defended the coach to him, only making the angry parent angrier. This escalated to some shoving and threatening in the lobby between 2 parents from the same team, in their own rink, in front of a crowd of the visiting team's parents and families. It would have escalated further if a parent from the other team hadn't told them to take it outside and stop being childish. The next weekend before another game, the angry parent gathered the rest of the parents, apologizing and breaking down into a sobbing mess, telling them he was going to therapy for his anger issues. According to my dad, this was by far the most awkward moment of his life. I started reffing basketball when I was 16, so needless to say, adult coaches had a hard time trusting a kid. I've had several experiences that I have had to eject a parent or coach. However, 2 events stick out for me. This game was in a select tournament, summer ball, and the losing team's coach was giving us attitude all game. We had tried to be patient because his team of 6th graders was losing by 40. Finally he started cussing out my cuficle, which is an automatic technical. No big deal. It didn't affect the outcome at all. After the game, he came over to me while I was changing out of stripes to threaten to have his boys to come over and take care of me in the parking lot. Keep in mind I was 17 at the time. When he followed me out to the parking lot to have a talk, the police were called and he had a report filed against him. The second incident came a couple of weeks later. About 45 seconds into the game, a dad from the stands begins berating for not making a call on a play that he believed the travel occurred. Before I could even warn him, he was on the floor trying to attack me. 2 other dads had to restrain him, and he was thrown out of the building. After the game, I was told the man was drunk at 2 in the afternoon at his daughter's 9th grade basketball game. I refed 11-16-year-old games when I was 15 to 17. Being so close in age to the players, parents thought they could do whatever they wanted. Worst moment was, I believe, 15-year-old players while I was 17. Kid slide tackles a goalie who is already down covering the ball. Easiest red card call on the planet. Kid's teammate comes running up and starts cursing me out. Another easy decision to give a yellow and tell him he needs to stop talking or he's gone too. All of a sudden, the second kid's dad comes running onto the field saying stuff about how he pays for his kid to play in this league. I can't do that. He's just supporting his teammate, etc. He gets all up in my face, so I start walking backwards telling him to please get off the field. He decided instead to threaten to punch me again. I'm 17 at the time. He just threatened to beat up a kid. So, I walked over to the coaches, said that I was threatened, and so I had the right to cancel the game immediately. I got in my car and drove away, while everybody was standing around confused. Ended up filing a report with the league, and that dad was banned from coming to his kids' games the rest of the season.